Leave Britney alone. Leave Britney alone. Leave Britney alone. Hi there, my name's Legia. I'm a real-life lawyer on a mission to demystify the law and how it affects your everyday life. Today, let's talk about Britney. This is not my first video talking about Britney. In fact, my first video that I ever posted on YouTube about 5 months ago was about the Britney Spears conservatorship. So we are revisiting this topic because that is my most popular video. That's right, the first video I ever posted on YouTube is now my most popular video. So how's that for trying to live up to something? In case you've been living under a rock, I'll let you know that the Framing Britney Spears New York Times documentary came out last week, and it has renewed the conversation around the star's conservatorship, as well as around conservatorship abuse, and the way that we viewed female celebrities who lost their minds in the 2000s. If you want more information on the background of the conservatorship, I suggest checking out that video. I dressed up for Britney today, obviously. I don't own like true butterfly clips, because I am almost a 30-year-old lady. But this is as close as I got. And it's not bad. I mean, look, when Britney was in her prime, I was about 9-10 years old, and I was obsessed with her. I had her CD and I had her karaoke CD, and I would spend a lot of time singing her songs to myself in a mirror. I had aspirations of being an American Idol until I was about 15 years old, and then I was too cool for school and quit that dream. But for a solid 6 years, I wanted to be a pop star, and Britney Spears was one of the reasons why. I think there's a lot of people out there that identify with Britney, and that's probably why to this day people are still really obsessed with her and obsessed with her story and obsessed with helping her in what seems to be a pretty fraught situation. Let's watch! Oh, before we get into it, I do want to note that I'm a lawyer, but I'm not your lawyer, and nothing that I say should be construed as legal advice, and you should always seek the advice of a licensed attorney if you have any legal questions. I'm just in it for Britney.
I have always viewed this situation as something that I don't think would have ever happened to a man in America.
I mean, okay, like, I'm a feminist, but like sometimes white women take it too far, you know what I mean? There are men that this happens to. Her point is valid in that probably a young male celebrity this wouldn't happen to, but there are a lot of older men that this happens to as well, so like, alright. That being said, however, I think that this whole Britney situation is just kind of a microcosm of a larger like issue with women and how we need to just leave women the hell alone.
You have the most adorable, pretty eyes. Do you have a boyfriend?
No, sir.
Why not?
They're mean.
Boyfriends? You mean all boys are mean? I'm not mean. How about me?
Sir, come here. Stop it. Can men stop? Can we just all agree that men should stop? She was like 5 years old, dude. Ugh, I hate it. I quit.
Kids go to the mall, so how do we reach those kids?
Do kids go to the mall? Is the mall still a place to go? If it's not, and you're below and you're in the Gen Z generation, let me just explain. A mall is an inside place where they have stores, like tons of them, with the physical objects in them, where you walk in and you touch the things and then you buy the thing. And they have these central rotundas. I'm from Minnesota, so we have the illustrious Mall of America, so it's very popular in the Mall of America. Celebrities or up-and-coming pop stars or just regular local singers set up a little stage in that rotunda and they'll sing some songs. Oh my god, that seems quaint now.
The video shows up. She owns the hallways at this school. And the song is obviously sexual in nature.
You know what else is sexual in nature? Wesley. Is he spicy or is it just the mustache?
You're seeing a person who reminds you in some ways of you. It's the control and command over herself and her space that seems cool.
Wow, it's like Wesley could see right into my soul.
She's so cool. I love her. I love the way she moves and she grows.
Oh, honey, you could tell that chick was in the midst of some hard years. I bet she developed a great sense of humor from living that childhood.
Your breasts.
My breasts.
You seem to get furious when a talk show host comes up with this subject.
I heard that she was 17 in that interview. Can men stop? Come here. Cut it out. Stop it. God. Leave Britney alone.
I'm not a diva. I'm not a diva. I know what I like and I know what I don't like.
The amount of shit that she had to put up with as a teen and the grace with which she handled it, she deserves a prize, a Nobel Peace Prize, that she was able to keep it together until 2007, frankly. Let's talk about what is a conservatorship. A conservator is a person or an entity that has been placed in control of another person's life and or finances. Conservator can be a single person like Jamie Spears, Britney Spears' dad, or it could be an entity like a bank, for example. And then they refer to the person who is under the conservatorship as a conservatee, or in some states they call them wards. And conservators do have fiduciary duties towards the ward or the conservatee, meaning they have to act in that person's best interest. That's the same situation as if you were investing your money with a financial institution. They have a duty, a fiduciary duty, to act in your best interest. There are two types of conservatorships. You have the conservatorship of the person and conservatorship of the estate. Conservatorship of the person is where the person is incapacitated to the point where they need help with daily activities like when do they brush their teeth, and when do they take a shower, and when do they go to the doctor, and when do they get to leave the house. It can be really controlling depending on the level of capability of the conservatee. And then conservator of the state, that conservator has full control over the conservatee's assets, meaning that they have the ability to spend the money as they see fit, to invest the money as they see fit. That being said, again, there is a fiduciary duty to act in the conservatee's best interest, so it's not like they theoretically can just willy-nilly spend the conservatee's money, but they do have full control over the conservatee, because the idea is that the conservatee isn't able to manage their finances themselves, or they are susceptible to undue influence. Conservatorships are most popular with elderly people like someone who will answer the phone and it'll be a prince from some foreign country who's asking them to send them a bunch of money, and they'll do it. Or they'll get an email with the same request and they'll do it. Things like that, where there's scams happening, where they're more susceptible to falling victim to things like that and can't be trusted to manage their own money in that way. That's where a conservatorship will come in. Or if it's just someone who just doesn't have the cognitive ability, either because they're incapacitated due to their age, an illness, drug addiction, things like that, to manage their assets. This is obviously applicable to people who actually have assets. So like someone who is poor isn't necessarily going to be a conservatee because there is no assets to control. That being said, it's not just rich celebrities that are subject to conservatorships. A lot of elderly people have spent their whole lives saving up for retirement and collecting assets like homes and things like that. So there is money there that needs to be managed, that maybe they reach an age where it's not possible for them to manage those daily affairs. A conservatee does have the right to have their concerns heard, to be able to voice what they do and do not like about the conservatorship. And they do often also have personal rights, like to have visitors, to get married, to make phone calls, to send mail, things like that. They also have the right to request to change or end the conservatorship. They have the right to vote. They have the right to receive an allowance, to make their own medical decisions, etc. It's really a case-by-case basis. However, the court has complete control to be able to revoke all of these rights, depending on what the court determines the conservatee needs or is in the conservatee's best interest, theoretically. This includes medical treatment. The court can take away the conservatee's right to consent to medical treatment and put all of that power in the hands of the conservator. So a person who's been appointed conservator of the state has to come back to the court periodically to inform the court how they're managing the conservatee's estate. After the implementation of a new conservatorship, the conservator has to come back a year later to give an accounting of what's going on with the finances. And then after that, every 2 years, the conservator has to go to the court and show what they've been doing with that conservatee's money. This is a sort of court oversight to make sure that no one's abusing the process. Clearly, it doesn't really work that well. I say that not only because of Britney's situation, but also because conservatorship abuse is a rampant problem that is coming to light more because of Britney's situation. The court also has control over determining how much the lawyers for the conservatee get paid. The conservatee pays for her lawyers, and often the lawyers of her conservators, out of her estate. The conservator himself gets to pay himself out of the estate that he controls. And the court can appoint an attorney, which is the case in Britney's case, and the court can have the conservatee pay for them as well. There are numerous studies that have been done that show that in California, as well as throughout the United States, there is actually very little court oversight into the administration of conservatorships. And the protections that you would think would be in place for someone who's a conservatee actually aren't really in place, because oftentimes if you go to the police or district attorneys about conservatorship abuse, they don't see it as within their purview because it's already being overseen by a court in a different agency of the state. And so for police or district attorneys to get involved, there has to be pretty blatant abuse or fraud happening happening, which is often not the case. So a lot of times when they get reports of conservatorship abuse, they don't really do much because they don't see it as under their purview, and they often don't have protocol in place to know how to handle it. Here's the thing about law enforcement: if they don't know what they're doing, then the laws just don't get enforced. We have this kind of fairy tale idea that, well, if the law's written, then I deserve this protection. And you do deserve the protection, but is it going to happen? Only if the police department in the region where you live has gotten some sort of specialized training on that law. See, for example, every cyber stalking type law that exists in this country. If the police don't know how to enforce the laws as they're written because they don't have the training, the laws are kind of moot in a lot of ways, unless you have the money to hire a lawyer. And in Britney's case, even if you do have the money to hire a lawyer, that doesn't necessarily do much, turns out.
Am I a virgin? Yes, I am a virgin.
Leave Britney Spears alone. Come here. Cut it out.
Video for one of his singles to incriminate her in the demise of the relationship.
I remember when that came out, and I remember being on Team Justin. We were all monsters once.
I just want to ask you one question. Did you Britney Spears? Okay, I did it. No.
Justin motherfucking Timberlake. I swear to God, if you don't leave Britney alone. Okay, but I did see that Justin issued an apology both to Britney and to Janet Jackson, because, you know, when you're under fire for one, you might as well just like wrap it all up in one handy apology and then move on with your life. I read the apology. It wasn't bad. I've definitely read worse apologies in terms of people kind of trying to shirk their responsibility. Was it 13 years too late? Yeah. It's too late. Hey men, could you stop? And then if you've done something bad, could you apologize now instead of waiting to get called out on it and hoping it just will never come up? Because I guarantee you that chick or person that you hurt is probably in therapy. Probably has been for a few years. Maybe an apology before having to get called out on it is better. At the same time though, if I had an ex who reached out to me to apologize about the shit that he did to me, I would feel like that was him doing it for himself and not for me. So that is a catch-22, I'll give him that, but still feels bad. Still doesn't feel right. Still doesn't feel solved, you know? Justin.
Really, if I had an opportunity to shoot Britney Spears, I think I would.
Okay, that's like, I was gonna say that's like the original Karen, but man, white women have been f***ing shit up for like way more years than this, but like, that's a Karen if I've ever seen one.
I'm not here to babysit her kid.
Amen, Britney. You know what? How about if you decide you want to give birth to a child or bring forth life into this world, you don't blame other people for when that kid discovers sex. How's that? You had a human. You know what we do? We do a lot of sex. If you're gonna say that some pop star is a reason why your daughter's a slut, you're probably not really understanding how humans work or how teens work. How bodies work. Leave Britney alone.
And I was the photography director of Us Weekly.
I immediately dislike this guy because he seems so likable, but he worked on a tabloid paying people to get pictures of celebrities. And he acts like it's like, you know, it's an honest living. It ain't much, but it's honest. You know, like, those are the type of people that are creepiest to me. Like, if you're an outright just kind of douche, like, at least you're owning it. It's these types of people where it's like, that's like sociopath behavior.
Britney tripping outside a New York hotel Thursday while holding her 8-month-old son in one hand.
That's right. No parent has ever tripped while holding their child before. Must mean she's bad.
I see a bunch of photographers and I'm scared and I want to get out of the situation and my baby's crying. They're coming up on the, you know, the sides of the car, you know, and they're banging on the windows.
I think that's a perfectly viable explanation. Sure, should you drive with your kid in the front seat sitting on your lap while you drive? No, of course not. I don't know if you've ever met a baby before. They're stressful. I've never personally given birth to one, but I have sisters who have, and I can't imagine adding just the general stress of having to exist in the world with a child on top of literal men with giant cameras banging on the sides of your car. At that point, I would assume survival instinct kicks in and you just want to get the hell out of there. I think it makes sense. Leave Britney alone.
Britney's mother, Lynn, writes that she thinks Britney was suffering from postpartum depression.
That's what I said in my last video.
Again, to me, this is just more evidence of maybe there was a traumatic birth or some sort of postpartum depression.
She had these kids back to back, like boom, boom. I mean, I think we know a lot more about the prevalence of postpartum depression now than we did back when she was having these kids, but like, I can't imagine with that back-to-back pregnancy on top of the insanity that was the paparazzi in her life, I can't imagine that didn't create a ton of depression and other mental illness that maybe didn't exist before but was just getting pushed to the brink. Also, I'll remind you, she was 24. 24! She was 24 and had 2 children and was like one of the most famous people in the entire world at 24. No, leave Britney alone.
Party girl Lindsay Lohan.
Man, if that ain't the trifecta of women who didn't deserve the shit they got in the 2000s. Also, again, Britney's 24 here. I don't know if you've ever been 24 yet or in the past, but like, I'm so glad that my shenanigans when I was 24 were not on the cover of national news magazines. Like, no one needed to see that, and thank God for it.
Not to sort of, with these kinds of imagery, be negative about people. It was to enjoy their lives in a somewhat aspirational / relatable way.
Ugh, God, I hate this guy. I will say, you can tell from all of these clips, like, she never really liked having hair, did she? Like, it never looks good. She could have never bothered for one moment to just run a comb through that shit. Like, it makes sense she shaved it off. Let her shave her hair off. She doesn't want it. You can tell. No shame, but I'm just spitting facts. I'm having a realization now with all of this coming back into the national conversation. Like, this happened in 2007. I was 15, I think. So we all judged. We thought she looked bad. We thought that it was crazy. Like, maybe there were people with more capabilities for empathy in 2007 than I had. But as a teenager, living in the suburbs of Minnesota, watching Britney Spears lose her mind, like, I had very little empathy. But now, upon rewatching this, I don't know, comment below if this has been your experience, but like, I deeply relate to the urge to shaving your head off when you just want people to leave you the hell alone. I obviously have never experienced paparazzi before, but like, I've definitely experienced my fair share of street harassment, for example, and the experiences I've had that have been most traumatic when it came to that kind of street harassment, my immediate, and I mean immediate, urge was to shave all of my hair off and cover my body in tattoos. And it was just this, like, it's always been this kind of visceral urge, is like, leave me alone. If I take away the things that make me feminine, maybe you will finally leave me the hell alone. Not that you can't be feminine with a shaved head, as we've learned from this COVID times with everyone shaving their heads, people look great, but it's definitely an urge of like taking back ownership of your body by removing the things that you've done because society has told you that it's what you're supposed to do as a woman. And I've certainly, like, I have a bunch of tattoos and a lot of them are a reclamation of my body and my skin and being mine. I think it's a huge thing that, especially women or just people who experience harassment probably experience, and I'm relating to Britney on a much deeper level than I did in 2007, and I'm shocked that there weren't more women at that time that weren't like, yeah, I get it, girl. I get it, girl. Because, man, I get it. Comment below if you shaved your head during quarantine. How'd it feel?
So she's saying essentially, with no hair, I quit.
Wesley gets it. I've spoken with multiple people about this, but she looks damn good in that picture. I hope someone recognized that at that time, because, like, she looks great bald.
She never gave a clue or information to us that I don't appreciate, you guys. Leave me the F alone.
What about when she said, leave me alone?
There were times where she like, can you leave me alone for the day?
If that ain't the gaslighting that is the underpinning of so much of misogyny, I don't know what is. Blatantly ignoring when a woman says leave me alone and saying like, well, she never said leave me alone, and then when you're confronted with the truth that she literally said leave me alone, you like explain it away as though, again, it was still her fault and you were just an innocent person doing your job. Ugh, I hate it. Men, stop it. Come here, stop it. I'm revved up.
We are told that she's been placed on a 5150 hold. That is essentially a medical health hold.
So a 5150 hold, it's referred to as 5150 because that's the number in the code that regulates this. The Welfare and Institutions Code, which allows for an adult person to be held against their will for up to 72 hours in California if they're experiencing mental health crises. Basically, it allows the doctors time to evaluate whether the person is going to be a danger to themselves or others. They also use it to determine whether the person is gravely disabled. I believe it was this hold that led to Britney Spears being determined to be gravely disabled such that a conservatorship could be created. This gave Jamie Spears the in that he needed to say that she needed a conservatorship to control her life and her finances. So let's talk about constitutional issues with conservatorships, mainly due process. What is due process? Well, we've talked about it a lot in a number of videos on this channel. You should probably go watch them. But basically, due process is the process you are due when the government tries to take away your life, liberty, or property. That process is usually notice of the fact that your life, liberty, or property is being taken away, and then a hearing or some sort of opportunity to be heard before a judge before getting that life, liberty, or property taken away, or within a reasonable amount of time after that life, liberty, or property has been taken away. Due process is protected by both the 5th and the 14th Amendment of the United States Constitution. The 5th Amendment applies to federal governments, so the federal government cannot take away your life, liberty, or property without due process of law. And then the 14th Amendment applies to states, so states can't take your life, liberty, or property without due process. In this situation, because it's the state of California, a California state court that makes a determination on who is going to be under a conservatorship, the 14th Amendment applies because it's state action. Obviously, the creation of a conservatorship gets in the way of your liberty and your property. It's making you hand over your liberty and your property to control of someone else. And the courts use a balancing test called a Matthews test because it's based on a case where one of the parties was named Matthews. And this test balances the individual's interest in their liberty or property with the state's interest in their ability to protect its citizenry, or the ability to adjudicate things in a timely manner, or their ability to save money and not spend too much money in the administration of certain issues. Things like that are all state interests that have to be balanced against a person's individual liberty and property. And then with that balancing, the court looks at erroneous deprivation. So making sure that it is not being done so erroneously. And the theory being that if you receive notice that your due process, your life, liberty, or property is being taken away, and you're given an opportunity to present your case before a neutral tribunal like a judge, then the likelihood of your due process being taken away, of your life, liberty, or property being taken away erroneously, is lower because you've been given an opportunity to be heard. This is all in theory and often not in practice. So there's another issue that's created because a lot of these conservatorship hearings are done what's called ex parte, meaning that the conservatee is not present at the time of the hearing. California courts have reasoned that this does not violate due process because the conservatee can immediately challenge the conservatorship after it's formed. So even if they're not there at the hearing that forms it, they'll still have ample opportunity to challenge it, which, as we see here, not great. That's like saying, well, you know, it's fine if we accidentally get the wrong guy and lock him up in prison for life, because, like, he has an appeal process that he can go through. So, like, it doesn't matter. But we seem to be fine with that in our country. Yeah, it's fine. Basically, like every deficiency in our judicial system, this is just kind of a microcosm of a larger ethos where we just kind of don't give a shit about people once they're in the system. It's like, well, you got in the system. Figure out your own way out. Good luck.
The next several years promise to be very lucrative for the conservatorship estate. This conservatorship should be viewed more as a hybrid business model.
The conservatorship, which really is put in place to take care of people,
naturally shouldn't be a business that is making exorbitant amounts of money.
Okay, so I like their point about how a conservatorship shouldn't be a business plan, but I would like to point out that in a conservatorship, the conservator owes the conservatee a fiduciary duty. This is the same as if you're investing your money in a bank. You know what a bank is? It's a business. A lot of times when people owe other people a fiduciary duty, it's still part of a larger business plan. So, like, as much as I get like in your brain why that wouldn't make sense in terms of like a conflict of interest, I think that's just capitalism, baby. I will say though that the conflict of interest that's created when you give someone power over both the person, a conservatorship of the person, and a conservatorship of the estate, where they have control over how that person acts and their finances, and it's someone like Britney Spears whose person is very valuable the more that she works, and you have control over how much she works, and the more that you work her, the more money that estate gets. There's a conflict of interest there, especially because the estate is paying you. I think that's a well-founded argument, and I think that there's a good argument to amending these laws so that someone can't be both a conservator of a person and a conservator of a state, because that doesn't actually make sense, ethically speaking. Well, that was fun. They did a good job. I think they captured the spirit of the movement. There's a lot of people that are really impassioned about Britney's story. I think it is indicative of a larger issue both in our judicial system and in our conservatorship system in this country. A lot of people are experiencing abuse and are not getting heard and are not getting the type of judicial oversight and justice that we think they ought to have, often because our court systems are clogged up, because judges have too many cases in front of them, and because, like I said, if you become part of the system, empathy goes away really quickly, even for someone as famous and who was the darling of America like Britney Spears. She's part of the system. At this point, it's up to her to figure out her way out. That's kind of how it works here. So as the documentary says, back in November, a bank, Bessemer Trust, was named a co-conservator in the estate of Britney Spears. Like I was saying, banks owe a fiduciary duty to people. They are often better suited to be fiduciaries in these situations because they are removed from the situation. There isn't this issue of like a familial relation. And last week was the latest hearing in Britney Spears' case on February 11th, and not a ton happened in that hearing, but they did discuss how much control Bessemer had versus Jamie Spears in the control of her estate, and the judge did overrule all the objections that Jamie Spears' attorneys made regarding his ability to control her estate, and asserted that Bessemer should have equal control to Jamie, which is important because it's showing that the judge is thinking a little bit more critically about the amount of power that Jamie Spears has over Britney's life, and probably hopefully thinking critically about the conflict of interest there. One of the lawyers on that call on February 11th, it was a call, not an actual hearing because COVID, a lot of things are happening virtually. A lot of hearings are happening virtually. One of the lawyers on that call was Thoreen, who was interviewed in this documentary, and it really does kind of boggle the mind that she even agreed to speak in that documentary, because there are certain ethical rules that as a lawyer you have to follow. Like, you can't talk about a case that you're actively working on. It's part of attorney-client privilege. Anything you talk about is presumed confidential and shouldn't be shared to the public at large. So if I were her, I wouldn't have touched that interview with a 10-foot pole. I'm shocked that she did. So that happened February 11th. There are further hearings scheduled for March 17th and April 27th, though it's unclear whether those are just going to be administrative or if anything larger will be decided there. Well, that was fun, informative. I hope you were entertained. Comment below if you have any questions. Let me know if there's anything else you'd like me to watch and react to. To those of you who are the OGs around this channel, I apologize that I've been a little absent the last couple weeks. I have some life updates happening that I've been hard at work at. Turns out it's really hard to be a full-time lawyer and also make YouTube videos and then also do other things. Still figuring out how to juggle that, so thank you for your patience. I'm hoping to share some of that personal news on here. A couple people have asked for me to share videos about myself, so maybe I'll do that. I'm getting pretty close to 1,000 subscribers, so maybe I'll do like a little 1,000 subscriber Ask Me Anything special. If you made it this far in the video, thank you so much for watching. Comment below a little shooting star so I can see how many of you made it this far. If you enjoyed this video, found it informational or entertaining, give it a thumbs up and subscribe if you're not already. Thanks so much for watching. Have a good day. Goodbye!